So that was the worst part. The other 3 different times that I was near death was, of course, on the road. We were bombed by the German Air Force, and this was in Zhytomyr. This I remember. There, it's there, Zhytomyr. Somewhere. I won't go into it. We were not going to look for it, but take my word for it. In Zhytomyr, all of a sudden we hear the planes coming in, and they started. This was near a railroad station. We were very close to the railroad station. They were bombing the railroad station, and Dad says, "Off the horse and buggy, get." And they were high. The grass was very high. He says, "Let's get down." And I wanted to see it, so I looked, and I saw the bombs coming down, and I could hear the explosions. And Dad says, "Put your head down. They're going to kill you. Put your head down." So I put my head down and survived. None of us got hurt, but the station was completely destroyed. That was the first time. And then when we were in Kazakhstan, I told you I was sick and I almost died. And then we had a landlord. By the way, we lived in mud houses. Everything was made out of mud. In fact, if you look on TV sometime and you see Afghanistan, they show some of the buildings or little home houses. They're made out of mud. And I say, gee, this is Kazakhstan. That's where I used to live. Everything was made out of mud, which means the walls, the roof, the floors, everything was mud. And every year you had to start all over again, because there was the rain and the snow, and the temperature used to be like 50 below zero in the winter. 45, 50 below zero was pretty normal. And the snow, when we worry about 20 inches of snow in New York, I would say 5 feet, about 60 inches of snow. How do you like that? And we could not get out of the house. So we had an open, we used to get out through the roof. You know, we had an opening. That's how we used to get out and then start shoveling snow. So that was in Kazakhstan. This is how we lived.
Can you show where in Kazakhstan you live?
Kazakhstan, activities?
Approximately.
Okay,
that's Kazakhstan.
Kazakhstan. And where's the border?
This is border.
This is the border? Because it's really not far from the border. It wasn't too far into Kazakhstan. So it's, I would say, roughly in here, yeah. That's Akhtubinsk. I even remember exactly Akhtubinsk was the oblast. It's like the big city. It's like Indianapolis. And then you had Ключевой район, which is a small town, let's say like Carmel, not far away. And then Stanция Alga, that's the station, was called Alga. And the trains, some of trains would stop, and most of the trains would not even stop because it was so small.
I got Alga for you.
Stanция Alga. You got Alga? No kidding. I can't. Oh my gosh. Yes, this is it. This is where we were. We spent 4.5 years there. 4.5 years. And I don't remember one day not to be hungry. I don't remember ever going to bed with a full stomach. And I used to ask my dad, "Dad, are we ever going to have enough bread to eat?" And he always was very optimistic. He said, "Yes, my son, yes, someday, soon, we will have enough bread to eat." Starving for 4.5 years. It was so easy. Still, we survived. So I mentioned how many times was I close to death? One time. How many times? 4. 4, I know, but how many times? I already told you I was ill. In the bombs? And the what?
And the typhus.
Typhus, that's the illness of typhus. And this was very strange. It was my job to bring, by the way, we didn't have water. We didn't have running water. We didn't have toilets, you know. The toilet was a hole in the ground. That's just us. The Kazakhs also live like that. This is how they live. A hole in the ground. In the winter, we would make like an igloo. And this was our bathrooms. I was in 10, 11, 12, and my neighbor woman would sit down next to me. And the first time I said, this is impossible, so I'd run into the house again. And then I had to use the bathroom. So I had to go. So I'm just giving you an exact taste of imagine to live like this. And yet we survived. So what happened? Okay, so my job was to go and bring the water in the morning, which I had to go, I would say, at least a mile. Well, there was a well, and there was actually they were pumping water there, and the whole community where we lived had to go and get some water. And now I was 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 years old, and my job was in the morning I'd go. Now imagine it's 45 below zero, and I'd have 2 pails, and I would go the mile, fill it up with water, and come back to the house. When it was 45 below zero, the water was frozen, stiff. It was just ice. And the snow was very, very high at that time, but we had a very narrow path that we would make it to the water hole. Okay, we call it the water hole. And when I came back, so you couldn't see anything on either side, but I knew to my house I would have to go to, get the water and bring it in. And that morning, my neighbor's dog, big, big dog, I think it was a German Shepherd, attacked me. And I couldn't get to the house. And every time I tried to go, he was on me. And this went on for quite a long time, about 10 minutes, and now it's 15 minutes, and every time I moved, he's on top of me, and if I would stand still, he would leave me alone. But I couldn't stand still. The water was already icicles, and I wanted to get to the house. Couldn't do it. So I realized, and then I was getting to a point where I said, I'm not going to make it. This is it. I'm going to die right here. So I have to do something. So I made up my mind, as soon as he attacked me, I was going to kick him.
You could hit him with the ice.
No, this was too heavy, it was too heavy to do that. So sure enough, I was ready. When he attacked me, I kicked him I used to play soccer too, so I was good at this. I kicked him in the head, and as soon as I kicked him, I could hear him scream, "Ah!" And he was running off. That's how I got back to the house. But it's funny now, but literally, I was going to freeze to death. And nobody would even see me because, as I said, the walls were this high, higher than I was, snow, and nobody was looking for me or anything, and I almost didn't make it. So that's another time where, so 4 different times that I was near, not to make it. Okay, so we made it through, and now came the time, the war was over. Anybody know the dates when World War II was over? Guess.
1948. It was
In June?
1945.
1945.
Yeah,
It was May. In fact, we just celebrated with my Russian friends, May the 9th, but actually we celebrated May the 8th. May the 8th, 1945, the good news came, the war is over. And by the way, during all this time, my dad would not let me go to school, so I did not go to school. But I did study Russian, and I could speak Russian fluently. In fact, I read all Shakespeare in Russian because there was a library not very far away. I used to go to the library, and I used to study on my own, self-taught. And I could speak Russian fluently. Okay, so now the war is over, and my dad says, we got to get out of here. And by the way, these other four boys also lived close to us, and they were tailors, so they all worked as tailors, and they all survived the war just like we did.